Good evening and good night, everyone. This is update for May 2, 2022, day 68 of the war, end of the date update. So we will do, as always, strategic discussion first, and then situational update and walkthrough. For those who are impatient in terms of situational update, there is essentially no changes. The front line is static. We still want to, if you watched yesterday's issue, then you up to date. Essentially, there's no changes. So that's in a short summary. We'll still do walkthrough for those who haven't watched, so they could be updated. There are some small minor updates here in the southern pincer. We just confirmed a little bit more information that we were a little bit educated guessing yesterday, but beyond that, there is not many updates at all. So now let's go back to strategic discussions. So there were two important questions that we would like to discuss. One was brought up in the comments by one of the viewers: is what are sort of strategic options for Ukraine, for Ukrainian army in this war of attrition, because this is turning into war of attrition. And the second topic we're going to discuss is about the role of basically the question is why Ukrainian army cannot successfully do offensives so far. They ended up in miserable failures. Both, two times that we are aware that they tried, they both totally failed, and that has to do. This is problem that has many aspects of it, but we will discuss one small point of it. More technical aspect of it is the artillery. Hopefully we mentioned it right. Russian artillery advantage over Ukrainian artillery, and like why and how this offensives getting destroyed by Russian artillery. So, but let's go back first to the options of Ukrainian side. So there are two. Since this is war of attrition, there are two options for Ukraine. One is to become much more efficient, and at least 4 to 5 times more efficient, and win this war by efficiency, right? So that really means that the changes needs to be done at the top, and the whole system needs to change. We believe that probability of that scenario is right now low. So then there is another option. That's what we believe is Ukrainian political top is betting on. That Ukraine gets significant amount of new weapons from the West that compensates for inefficiency of Ukraine in smaller size, enough that basically it overcomes Russian quantitative advantage. So right now, it seems that the second scenario is going to play out. We'll see if we'll see as it develops, as those things unfold. But that's right now the path of sort of least resistance, right? Because changing the system is much more difficult. In current Ukrainian political top does not really want to change the system. They happy with the status quo. So only sort of difficult situation will sort of force the change on Ukraine. So that's kind of and in terms of what's happening on the front lines from the big picture, Ukrainian side is clearly buying time in expectation of arrival of these new weapons, and hopefully in a large quantities, as we discuss, so that they can create a difference on the battlefield. For that reason, when we mention about 90 howitzers, M777, or even if it's 150, if it's 180, it's simply not enough to change the situation in a meaningful way. Because just as a reference point, Ukraine had in the troops about 1,500 units, pieces of artillery, right, before the war started. This is just in the in those brigades that are on front lines. some portion, we don't know how many units of artillery were lost, but for sure at least 2, 3, 400 were lost, right? So just to compensate for that amount, you need, those 200 or 180 of M777 that were promised, and to make it real. And Russia has many more pieces of artillery, right? Probably has, and this is obviously our very rough estimates, probably has 3,000-4,000 pieces, right? So you really need, when we're talking about the Western help, we're really talking about probably more than 600-700 units, and probably more like 1,000-1,200 units that are needed, and also to create qualitative advantage, right? So that's kind of where it all stands with the help, and what is really needed. Let's say we assume that Ukraine doesn't change in terms of efficiency, then you really need those type of numbers in terms of Western weapons. And that also creates a lot of logistical problems, because it's not just, howitzer. You really need a lot of ammunition for it. And Ukraine did not create manufacturing capacity to produce artillery shells and even bullets since 2013, when the war started, really. And so it kind of tells you a lot how far behind Ukraine is as a system. So now let's actually look at the Russian artillery, and let's actually look how it works. That, let's say, Ukraine tries to do offensive, and it just simply turns into bloodbath for Ukrainian side. So the way it works is Russian artillery is pretty relatively advanced, relative at least to Ukrainian side, and the advantage of it is actually UAV called Orlan-10 that essentially every artillery battery has. It's basically embedded in the artillery unit, and there is a team that runs this Orlan-10, and they launch it, and that helps them to really correct. It's basically fire correction tool. There's more applications of it, but the main, like, for purposes of this discussion, that's what really matters. So then the fire is very precise, very exact, and it really destroys Ukrainian Ukrainian attacking troops before they even reach distance to do any damage to the Russian troops that are on defensive. So it's essentially kind of like a wall of fire that prevents Ukrainian side from even reaching Russian side, right? Because this whole system works very well, and this UAV was introduced into the Russian artillery in about 2010. So they had a lot of time to train. It works. The whole system works very well, like a perfect system. This UAV has pretty good capabilities. As you can see, it can. Sorry for this. It can stay in the air for 16 hours. The distance is at least 120 kilometers when they basically sort of, how to say, operated. And then in autonomous flight is 600 kilometers. It also not dependent on GPS, so it can navigate by just using the pictures from the ground. So that's big strengths, and also has it's built out of composite material, which has very small signature for radars, so it's hard to detect. So it's overall it's pretty decent system. Given that it was designed in 2010, it's pretty good architecture, so it works even right now. there's sort of small kind of weaknesses. It's a catapult system. It's not that easy. It takes time for it to start and so on. But overall, it's not bad system, given that it was developed, let's say 15 years ago, because that's when it was introduced into the army in 2010. So it probably was developed in 2007, 8, 9, somewhere there. In addition, they have a lot of these UAVs. The production capacity is about 230 units per year. In giving, let's say, 12 years or 11 years, they probably produced more than close to 3,000 units. So the army is saturated with these UAVs. The only disadvantage, sort of weakness of this UAV heavily relies on imported components from Japan, from Germany, basically all over the places. So right now, because of the sanctions, essentially Russia won't be able to produce this, but it has built a lot and enough to for you know to for some so it lasts for some time in the army. So that's a main advantage of Russian artillery and why it's able to very efficiently fend off Ukrainian offensives. That's not the only reason why Ukrainian offensives fail, but from sort of technical, from the weapons perspective, that's a main reason. However, this system has weaknesses, as any system, and specifically, it apparently has old software. So it's designed just to detect essentially large, bulky items such as tanks, AFVs, and it's pretty poor at detecting, and essentially very bad at detecting soldiers, a group of soldiers. This is based on feedback that we're hearing from Ukrainian side, right, from their experiences. And then it's kind of like the car, sort of the smaller the object, the lower the chances that it will detect it. But it's pretty good at detecting, tanks, and which is probably what it is designed for in the first place, right? Because the top target for artillery is not a single soldier, but more tanks or other large equipment. So that's what really is somewhat sort of a saving grace for Ukrainian attacks. That it doesn't turn into total bloodbath, but soldiers can sort of relatively safely retreat. So that's quick kind of information on this system. So now let's actually look at a little bit at the like quality of Ukrainian and Russian generals, and specifically there is always questions like, oh, how does this affect if General XYZ got killed or allegedly got killed? Specifically, this is related to the recent to yesterday's news that allegedly head of Russian general staff was wounded on Izyum bridgehead, which is let's look somewhere here, that allegedly he was there and got wounded. In our opinion, this is, well, first of all, it does sound, this does look to us as Ukrainian propaganda. That's the first thing. The second is it's really irrelevant whether General XYZ is gonna get killed on either Ukrainian or Russian side. And we say that because both armies are essentially descendants of the Soviet army. And in Soviet army, it's not about quality, it's about quantity, and all of the generals exactly the same way. The expendable material. If General XYZ get killed, okay, there's General ABC who's gonna replace him. He's very mediocre, he's not great, he's just a function, right? So this is how the system works. That system still works. It hasn't really changed. It was somewhat sort of changed around the corners, but the essence of it stays the same, where like they are basically, they're not Napoleons, they're not like Romans, and that's another part why Ukraine cannot do successful offensive, and when why Russia is also overall is not successful in this war despite significant advantages that it has, right? That has to do with the quality of the military top on both sides, where it's all about, bureaucracy, red tape, no zero initiative. It's do what you're told, don't think too much. That's type of the system that they represent, basically. Okay, so that's answer to that. Hopefully, that's an answer to that question. Now let's actually go back and let's walk through the front lines as we always do. So let's actually generally discuss overall situation. So here and that's we always do clockwise fashion. So we start from the north. So here in near Kharkiv, Russian side is on defensive. Ukrainian side tries to do some local attacks just to improve position. It's not part of any major offensive or anything like that. Just local actions. Where the Russian side is focusing is obviously on this Donbass salient, and so it tries to create northern and southern pincers, right, to encircle Ukrainian troops in this Donbass salient. Our assessment that this chances of success here are going down with every passing day, and in a way, Russia needs a miracle to accomplish that task. But nevertheless, this is where they focus. That's where the Russia is putting major effort here. Then again, if we look at this Kherson bridgehead here, Russia is on defensive here. Ukraine is also on defensive, so it's kind of stalemate here. Neither side tries to change the position much. So now let's actually go and look specifically at the front lines in each area. So as we discussed yesterday, there were exchange of attacks here. Neither side succeeded, so the front line remains the same. Since the time Ukraine a little bit squeezed out Russian side, nothing has changed since then. And we also want to mention that this initial, like, sort of first, the initial front line is basically being manned by the troops from DNR, which is Ukrainian occupied territories, and those troops are essentially former Ukrainian citizens that were, some of them willingly joined this DNR units. Some of them were forcefully conscripted into it. So those troops are like very low quality, like I would say third-rated quality. So that really tells us that Russian military put all of the regular battle-capable troops to achieve success on Izyum bridgehead. So now let's actually move a little bit south and look at the Izyum northern part of the Donbass salient, which is called Izyum bridgehead, which is here. So again, there's no changes here in the front lines, the same situation. On this Ukrainian, and actually we want to mention about something about the there are sort of rumors or the news on the propagated by Russian side that there is some kind of encirclement of Ukrainian troops here near Oskil in this area, which we believe is fake Russian propaganda in this case, because there is no point. There's simply there's no logic behind it. So if this is major supply route and major paths of Russian troops that come to Izyum bridgehead here, they would not allow thousand of Ukrainian soldiers be floating around that and creating a threat to them. So, and then in addition, what is also suspicious is that they just say it's troops from Ukrainian National Guards, which doesn't make any kind of sense. So we think this is some kind of fake propaganda, and there just doesn't, that just simply, if you really think logically, it doesn't make any kind of sense. In terms of this Ukrainian bridgehead, Russian troops basically slowly squeezing in Ukrainian troops from here. So, and there is a potential to create small encirclement if Ukrainian troops will not withdraw from Lyman in time, right? The bridge was blown up here, but it doesn't mean that they cannot sort of retreat successfully on the other side. It's not a big river overall, so that everything is possible. However, the problem is that essentially Russian troops are kind of like coming from the flanks here, and this creates potential for encirclement, or Ukrainian side simply will be forced to withdraw to the western bank of the river. At this point, Ukrainian side is just really playing delay tactics. There is no strategic importance of this bridgehead, so that's only the question. They're just buying time at this point. In addition, we also confirmed that Russian 24th Special Forces Brigade is operating here, and basically it operates on the bridgehead, and also parts of it were spotted in this area around Yampil. So, but overall, we can say there is no major changes here. Now let's actually look at the here at the tip of the Donbass salient around town of Severodonetsk and south of it. Again, there's no changes here. There were some questions from one of the viewers. What were the change? What was captured by Russian side? So, Russian side about 4 or 5 days ago captured the village of Nizhny, which is here. Hopefully, you can see it. And then also they captured village of Novotoshkivsky. And now there is a fighting for village of Orikhovo, where at this point majority of the village is in Russian hands, and Ukrainian troops somewhere on outskirts of it. We don't know exact details though. So otherwise the front line around Severodonetsk is static. There is no, this is the major town here, and also Ukrainian side essentially lost majority of the Rubizhne, which is another smaller town here near Severodonetsk, and they just hold very southern outskirts of Rubizhne. So there's no changes here on the front lines, the same static. There is ongoing fighting, but there are no changes on the front line, and it does really turns into more and more into World War I in terms of just very static fighting. So let's look a little. We're gonna go a little bit south. We're gonna look at the town of Popasna here, which is another major place of fighting. So this continuous Russian attacks with attempt to capture this town. They captured about plus minus half of it. So basically they control southern and southeastern part of it, and Ukraine controls kind of northwestern part of it. So, but there are no changes here again, the same situation. Then the front line here in this area has been pretty much always static. There's just exchanges of artillery fire, but nothing really major happened here since the beginning actually of the war. So we're not even looking here. Now let's actually look at front line directly west of Donetsk, where the Russian side is putting effort to make a progress. There is ongoing attack on town of Avdiyivaka without much success for the Russian side. The same is true for village of Maryinka. The same sort of, the same place where they attack, and also Novomykhailivka. So no changes here as well. Now let's look at this we call it Zaporizhya front line, which starts from Velika Novosilka really and ends in Vasilievka, which is Vasilievka is controlled by Russian side. We're gonna focus mostly on the eastern part of this front line because the western part is more or less stable and there are no changes there. And the Russian effort is on the eastern side of this Zaporizhia front line. So let's actually look what's going on here. So we were able to confirm that Russian side is controlling village of Novosilka. So they basically moved a little bit more towards north. And what happened is that Ukrainian side, so what happened is that 109th Ukrainian militia brigade and 110th, they suffered pretty significant losses. This is what we're learning right now. So about 4 or 5 days ago, they have suffered pretty significant losses when units from 19th Division and 42nd Division, Russian divisions attacked. And so they were actually stopped around this village of Vilne Pole. And what Ukrainian side had to do is to bring some detachments from 128th Brigade. And just to show you, 128th Brigade operates in this area here, on this kind of like northern flank of the Donbass salient. So it apparently some like battalion size, a couple battalions were brought back, as you can imagine here. Or potentially we would, it's possible the entire brigade is brought here, but at this point we only understand that there are units of this brigade operating here. We don't know, like, if entire brigade operates, but does look to us that more like a battalion size unit operates there. It also kind of tells us that the whole, this unit's getting intermingled, as you can see, because Russian side is also having 2 units operating here. And elsewhere, it's also on Izyum bridgehead. You saw all kind of Russian units there intermingled. So that's just generally not a good sign for both sides. It means that there's a chaos and they are very stretched to the maximum on both sides. However, apparently the Russian troops were stopped right ahead before this village of Vilne Pole. So for now, looks like the front line here stabilized. We'll keep you updated as things develop. Otherwise, regular attacks on Ukrainian stronghold of Gulyai-Pole and no changes there. So let's continue kind of looking through this. This is the whole stretch of the Zaporizhia front line. As we discussed, this western part is more or less stable basically from Gulyai-Pole to Kaminsky, which is controlled by Ukrainian side. There's not much happening. The whole effort is between this village of Velika Novosilka and Gulyai-Pole. That's where the Russian side is trying to build a southern pincer to encircle Ukrainian troops in the Donbass salient. Now let's move and look what's going on here on Kherson bridgehead. Again, there is no really changes, just positional fighting, artillery shelling, nothing, just both sides kind of like on defensive here. They don't have enough resources to continue fighting here because all of the resources are channeled, as we discussed, to this Donbass salient, which is the crucial point of the fighting at this time. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.